The sun had not fully risen yet, but the construction site was already alive. Dust floated in the air, mixing with the smell of wet cement and iron. Machines stood like giants waiting to wake up, while workers slowly gathered, some stretching their tired bodies, others sipping cheap tea from small cups. It was just another day. It's no different from the hundreds before it. Among the workers was a man who rarely spoke and less spoken to. He arrived earlier than most, walking several kilometers every morning to save bus money. His clothes were always clean but old, faded by years of hard work and repeated washing. He tied his shoes carefully, not because they were expensive, but because he knew one loose lace could lead to a fall and a lost day's pay. He was not special in any obvious way. He did not complain, did not argue, and did not try to stand out. He simply worked, brick by brick, load by load, hour after hour. When others rested, he often kept going a little longer, hoping the supervisor would notice and maybe offer extra hours. Life had taught him that effort was his only safety net. The site itself was loud and rough. Shouting, metal clanging, engines starting and stopping. The ground was uneven, filled with stones and broken concrete. Safety rules existed on paper, but reality was different. Every worker knew that one mistake could change everything. Still, they came every day. Because staying home meant no money and no food, as the morning progressed, a black car stopped near the edge of the site. It did not belong there. Most vehicles that came were trucks or old vans. This one was quiet, polished, and out of place. A few workers noticed but did not care much. Visitors came, sometimes took a look, and left. A man stepped out of the car. He was dressed simply, but his clothes were clearly not cheap. He wore clean shoes that had never touched dust like this before. He stood still for a moment, looking around as if trying to understand the place and the people in it. His eyes moved slowly, observing every detail. Some workers whispered. Others laughed quietly. Another boss type, someone muttered, probably here to complain. The man did not speak. He walked slowly across the site, careful where he stepped. The supervisor rushed toward him, wiping sweat from his forehead, smiling too quickly. They talked in low voices. The visitor nodded but kept looking around, not at the buildings, but at the workers. The quiet laborer noticed him too, but only briefly. He had learned not to stare at people above his level. It usually brought trouble. He focused on his task, lifting heavy material onto his shoulder, feeling the familiar burn in his arms. By mid-morning, the sun grew stronger. Sweat-soaked shirts, throats dried quickly. Break time finally came, short and rushed. Workers sat wherever they could find shade on bricks, near walls, under half-built structures. Conversations were loud, filled with jokes, complaints, and dreams that never seemed to move closer. The quiet laborer sat a little apart, eating simple food wrapped in paper. He ate slowly, making it last. As he drank water, he noticed the visitor standing alone near a pillar. The man looked uncomfortable. His face was pale, and he kept adjusting his collar. The heat was clearly affecting him. The supervisor was busy on his phone. No one else seemed to care. For a moment, the laborer hesitated. He thought about his own problems: rent due, rising prices, family waiting for money. Helping someone important could be risky. Important people often misunderstood simple actions. Still, something about the man's expression made him stand up. He walked over slowly. "Holding his water bottle, sir," he said politely. Keeping his voice low, "It's very hot here. You can sit in the shade. Please take some water." The visitor looked surprised. He seemed confused for a second, as if no one had spoken to him like this in a long time. "Oh, thank you," the man replied, accepting the bottle. The laborer pointed to a shaded area and pulled over a small wooden plank to sit on. It was not much, but it was cooler than standing. Some workers nearby noticed and laughed. "Look at him," one said. "Trying to impress the boss?" Another added. "He'll get nothing for it." The laborer heard them but said nothing. He sat quietly, giving the man space. The visitor drank water slowly, clearly relieved. "You work here every day?" the visitor asked. Yes, the laborer replied. 6 days a week. Sometimes 7? That's hard, the man said. The laborer smiled faintly. It's life. There was a short silence. The noise of the site filled the gap. Then the visitor spoke again. Why did you help me? The laborer thought for a moment. Because you looked like you needed it. No big words. No drama. The visitor nodded, looking thoughtful. Break time ended too quickly. Workers stood up, stretching and complaining. The laborer picked up his tools. The visitor returned the bottle. Thank you, he said again, this time with more feeling. The laborer nodded and went back to work, not expecting anything else. To him, the moment was already over. But the visitor did not forget. As the day continued, the laborer worked as usual. He helped others lift heavy loads, warned a coworker about a loose wire, and fixed a small mistake without being asked. He did not know that someone was quietly watching him from a distance. The visitor stayed longer than expected. He asked questions. He watched how the laborer treated others, how he worked without cutting corners, how he stayed calm even when shouted at unfairly. Near the end of the day, a loud sound echoed through the site. A stack of materials shifted suddenly. Workers shouted warnings. Panic spread. The laborer reacted without thinking. He pushed one worker out of the way and helped stabilize the load until others arrived. Dust filled the air. For a moment, everything froze. When it was over, no one was hurt. The supervisor yelled, more angry than thankful. The laborer said nothing and returned to his place. His hands were shaking slightly, but he kept working. The visitor watched all of it. As evening came, the site slowly emptied. Workers left in groups, tired and silent. The laborer wiped his face, picked up his bag, and began the long walk home. Behind him, the visitor stood near the black car. Deep in thought, he had come to inspect a project, but what he found was something else entirely. The next day started much like any other. The sun rose slowly over the dusty construction site, casting long shadows across the unfinished walls and scattered tools. The laborer arrived early, as usual, carrying his worn-out bag and tying his old shoes with care. Each step felt heavy, yet he moved forward without complaint. Life had taught him that complaining did not make things better. And work, no matter how tiring, was the only way to survive. Workers gathered, exchanging greetings that were more habit than warmth. Machines hummed to life. Steel and concrete awaited attention. And supervisors walked the site, already checking for mistakes. The air smelled of dust, sweat, and cement, a combination that had become normal to everyone there. The laborer started his work immediately, lifting bricks and arranging them neatly, making sure every layer was aligned. His movements were steady and practiced. Every worker knew he was dependable, even if he did not speak much or try to stand out. He simply did his job quietly and efficiently. Mid-morning, the black car returned. It had left a small impression on the workers yesterday, though most had not paid it much attention. Today it brought the same man back. He stepped out, careful with every movement, looking around as if the place was a foreign land. There was a faint tremor in his hands, and his shirt clung to him under the rising heat. Workers exchanged glances, some smirking, others whispering about how out of place he was. He did not speak at first, moving slowly, observing rather than judging. The laborer noticed him immediately. He had seen the man yesterday, had offered him water and a place in the shade, and had moved on. Today, curiosity stirred within him. The visitor seemed uneasy and alone, and something told the laborer that he might need help again. During the break, the laborer sat under a partially built wall, eating his simple food. The visitor stood nearby, looking uncomfortable. His face betrayed confusion and a faint hint of worry. He glanced around at the workers, most of whom were laughing or playing cards, ignoring him. The laborer approached, holding his water bottle, and offered it without a word. "Sir, take some water. You look hot," he said gently. The visitor's eyes widened slightly, and he accepted it, surprised by the act. "Thank you," he replied quietly. "Sit here if you want," the laborer said, pointing to the shade. "It is cooler." The visitor hesitated, as if unsure of whether it was appropriate. then sat down, placing his hands carefully on his knees. He drank slowly, savoring each sip. The laborer sat nearby, giving him space, not waiting for thanks or recognition. A few workers noticed this interaction and whispered, "Why is he helping the visitor again?" One asked, "Trying to get a reward?" Another sneered. The laborer heard, but ignored them. He did not care about what others thought. His focus remained on helping someone who clearly needed it. He had learned long ago that kindness was not for applause. It was simply right. As they sat, the visitor spoke softly. "Why do you help me?" "You barely know me." The laborer shrugged. "Because it seems like you need it. That is all." The simplicity of his answer struck the visitor. He had never heard such honesty in a world full of hidden motives. A quiet calm fell between them, broken only by the distant sounds of the site. After the break, work resumed. The visitor wandered slowly among the workers, asking subtle questions, observing quietly. He watched the laborer guide younger workers on lifting heavy materials safely, saw him correct a small mistake without calling attention to it. He noticed how the laborer's hands were scarred and worn, a testament to years of hard work. Despite exhaustion, he moved with purpose, helping wherever needed. By late morning, a sudden shout interrupted the rhythm of work. A heavy beam shifted unexpectedly and panic spread across the site. The laborer's instincts took over. Without hesitation, he ran toward the beam. Pushing a younger worker out of the way and holding the load steady until others could help, dust filled the air, eyes watered, and voices shouted warnings. The chaos was intense, but thanks to the laborer's quick action, no one was seriously hurt. When the dust settled, the supervisor yelled, frustrated more than thankful. The laborer remained calm, returning to his tasks. His hand shook slightly, but he did not stop. The visitor, however, watched with admiration and a growing respect. He saw courage, humility, and strength that money could not buy. Throughout the day, the visitor stayed longer than expected. He continued to observe quietly, noting how the laborer treated everyone fairly, how he never sought attention, and how small acts of care defined him. When lunch arrived, the visitor hesitated before opening the simple lunchbox he had brought, as if unsure what he was allowed to do. The laborer noticed and offered him some space, quiet understanding passing between them. Hours passed, and the sun began its slow descent. Workers were tired, faces streaked with dirt and sweat. The laborer continued, lifting materials, guiding others, and ensuring everything was in order. The visitor lingered, still quietly observing, fascinated by someone so ordinary, yet so extraordinary in character. As the day drew to a close, the laborer packed his belongings and started his long walk home. Behind him, the visitor stood silently, deep in thought. He had come expecting to inspect a building project, check schedules, and perhaps find mistakes. Instead, he found something far more valuable: integrity, selflessness, and genuine kindness. For the laborer, it was just another day, another set of challenges to face. He did not know that his small act of kindness yesterday, and his courage today, had left a mark on someone whose life could change the course of his own. And though he walked home tired, dusty, and unnoticed by most, he carried within him a quiet strength that no one could ever take away. The sun rose slowly over the construction site, casting a golden light over the half-built walls and scattered tools. It was another day of hard work, sweat, and long hours. The laborer arrived early, as he always did, carrying his old bag and carefully tying his worn shoes. The streets on the way had been busy, yet he walked with the same quiet determination that had defined his life for years. Life was never easy, but he had learned to keep moving forward, one step at a time. Workers greeted each other as usual, some with smiles, others with grumbles. Machines roared to life, dust filled the air, and the smell of cement mixed with sweat and oil. Every corner of the site seemed alive with motion. The laborer immediately started his work, lifting bricks, arranging them carefully, and making sure each piece was set properly. He had a steady rhythm, quiet focus that allowed him to work longer than most. The black car arrived again, smooth and out of place on the dusty ground. The visitor stepped out, looking around with careful curiosity. He seemed slightly nervous, adjusting his shirt and taking slow steps, as if each movement needed thought. His eyes scanned the site, not just at the buildings, but at the people working tirelessly under the harsh sun. Some workers noticed and whispered, "Here he comes again. Who does he think he is?" Others simply laughed, too focused on their own work to care. The visitor walked slowly, observing quietly, and the laborer noticed him immediately. Something about his hesitation yesterday, quiet gratitude he showed when offered water, lingered in the laborer's mind. He did not know why, but he felt a responsibility to help. During the short morning break, the visitor stood near a shaded corner, clearly uncomfortable. His hands trembled slightly as he held a cup of water. The laborer approached with a calm voice, offering him the water bottle again. "Sir, take some water. You must be thirsty," he said. The visitor looked surprised, then grateful. "Thank you," he replied softly. "Sit here if you want," the laborer added, pointing to the shade. "It is cooler here." The visitor hesitated, then accepted. He sat carefully on a small wooden plank, drinking the water slowly. The laborer stayed a short distance away, giving him space. He knew that sometimes simple gestures were enough, and no words were needed. The other workers noticed, whispering and laughing quietly. "Why is he helping him again?" one said, trying to earn a favor. Another mocked. The laborer ignored them, focusing instead on offering what help he could. He had learned long ago that kindness was never about recognition. It was about doing what was right. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the site. A stack of heavy materials had toppled, scattering debris and sending dust into the air. Workers shouted in panic. The laborer reacted immediately, rushing forward without hesitation. He pulled a younger worker out of the path and braced the falling materials until others could assist. The chaos was intense, but no one was seriously hurt. The laborer's hands shook slightly, but he kept moving, helping wherever needed. The visitor watched silently from a short distance, amazed by the laborer's quick thinking and courage. He saw not just physical strength, but calmness and presence of mind that no amount of money could buy. After the situation was under control, the supervisor yelled at everyone to get back to work. The laborer did not complain. He returned to his tasks, steadying his hands and focusing on the next load. The visitor remained, observing, slowly realizing that this man's actions were a rare and genuine form of bravery and selflessness. Throughout the day, the laborer continued to help others. He guided younger workers, shared advice, and corrected small mistakes without drawing attention to himself. The visitor followed him quietly, noting his every move. He had come expecting to inspect concrete and schedules, but what he was witnessing was something far more valuable, a character that shone without expectation. During lunch, the visitor hesitated with his meal, unsure if it was appropriate to sit nearby. The laborer noticed and offered a simple nod, a silent invitation to join him if he wished. The visitor smiled faintly, but remained standing, simply appreciating the gesture. The laborer ate his simple food slowly, savoring every bite, not because it was special, but because he knew that food and work were precious. As the sun climbed higher, a sudden shout rang out. A scaffolding piece wobbled dangerously, threatening to fall. Workers panicked, unsure of what to do. The laborer acted instinctively, running toward the hazard. He steadied the scaffolding, helped a worker regain balance, and guided everyone to safety until the situation was under control. Once again, dust filled the air, voices shouted warnings, and fear passed quickly into relief. The visitor watched all of it. His admiration grew with every passing moment. He saw courage, humility, and selflessness in the laborer's actions, qualities that were rare in the world he came from. He realized that these traits could not be bought, and they could not be learned from books. They were born from experience, hardship, and a quiet, persistent goodness. By late afternoon, the site slowly emptied. The sun cast long shadows, and workers were tired, faces streaked with sweat and dust. The laborer, as usual, stayed until the last moment, checking materials, guiding others, and ensuring safety. When he finally packed his bag and began the long walk home, the visitor followed at a distance, lost in thought. The day had been long and exhausting, yet for the visitor, it was enlightening. He had come to a construction site expecting routine inspections, schedules, and reports. Instead, he found something far more meaningful, a man whose simple acts of kindness and courage had left a profound impression. The visitor understood that he had witnessed not just a worker, but a character that could change lives, including his own. The laborer walked home slowly, tired yet steady. He did not realize the impact of his actions, nor did he expect recognition. To him, helping someone in need, preventing accidents, and doing his work honestly were just part of life. Yet the visitor knew that what he had seen was rare. It was the kind of human goodness that could not be taught or replicated, the kind that left a lasting mark by the time the laborer reached his small home. The sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. He was greeted by the familiar smells of home, the warmth of family, and the quiet satisfaction of a day spent doing what he believed was right. Little did he know, his simple acts of courage and kindness had begun a story that would change everything, not just for him, but for someone who had the power to alter the course of his life in ways he could never imagine. The morning air was thick with the smell of cement and dust as the laborer arrived at the construction site, carrying his old worn bag and tying his shoes carefully, as he always did. The streets he walked from his home were already busy with people rushing to their own jobs, yet he moved slowly, steadily, with a purpose that had been ingrained over years of hard work. His life had never been easy, but he had learned that the only way forward was through persistence, quiet determination, and a commitment to doing what was right. The site was already bustling. Machines roared to life. The sound of metal on metal echoed across the buildings, and the workers went about their routines with practiced motions. Some carried heavy loads, others directed traffic of materials, and all were caught in the rhythm of labor that had become second nature. The laborer began his work immediately, lifting bricks, arranging them carefully, ensuring that every corner of the structure was aligned properly. He did not complain, even though his muscles ached from the long days he had endured. His movements were deliberate, precise, and methodical. Mid-morning, the black car arrived again. It had become a small point of curiosity for the workers, who whispered and stared as the visitor stepped out. His shoes were clean, his clothes clearly expensive, yet he walked carefully, as if afraid of the uneven ground. He glanced around the site, not at the buildings or the machinery, but at the people working tirelessly under the hot sun. His eyes lingered on the laborer, who had noticed him almost immediately, though he did not approach him today. The laborer continued his work, mindful of every detail, yet aware of the visitor's gaze. There was no fear or awe in him, only a quiet acknowledgement. He had offered kindness without expectation, and he continued to live by that principle. The visitor, standing nearby, seemed increasingly uncomfortable in the environment, as if the dust and noise were overwhelming. He looked at the laborer with something akin to respect, though he could not yet put it into words. During the mid-morning break, the laborer ate his simple meal, wrapped in brown paper. The visitor stood awkwardly, holding a bottle of water, unsure of where to go or what to do. The laborer noticed his hesitation and gestured toward the shade, offering him a place to sit. The visitor approached cautiously and accepted the gesture. Sitting down with his water bottle in hand, "You always help people." "Even strangers," the visitor said softly, his voice tinged with curiosity. The laborer shrugged. "I help because it is right. I don't expect anything in return." The visitor paused, thinking. The world he came from was filled with people who acted out of self-interest, where kindness was often a strategy, not a genuine feeling. He was struck by the simplicity and honesty of the laborer's words. For a moment, he simply watched him, observing the way he ate slowly, savored each bite and never rushed, even under the watchful eyes of others. After the break, work resumed. The visitor stayed close, still observing quietly. He asked subtle questions about the work, not in a way that demanded answers, but as if he genuinely wanted to understand. The laborer responded politely, explaining small details without boasting or exaggerating. He guided younger workers patiently, corrected mistakes without raising his voice, and ensured safety measures were followed carefully. By midday, a loud crash echoed across the site. A stack of heavy materials had shifted, threatening to fall. Panic spread among the workers. Without hesitation, the laborer ran toward the danger. He steadied the load, pulled a coworker out of the way, and ensured everyone was safe until others could assist. Dust filled the air and voices shouted warnings and gratitude alike. The laborer's hands were scratched and sore, but he did not stop working. Returning to his task with a calmness that amazed the visitor watched silently. Realizing that the laborer's actions were not motivated by recognition, reward, or fear, he was guided by a simple, unspoken principle: help others when needed. The visitor could see integrity and courage in the laborer's every move. It was rare, powerful, and unpretentious. As afternoon approached, the site continued its rhythm of labor. The visitor lingered longer than expected, observing, learning, and reflecting on what he had witnessed. He asked small questions about safety, construction techniques, and materials, but his mind kept returning to the laborer. How someone so ordinary in appearance could hold such extraordinary qualities remained a mystery to him. The laborer worked steadily, carrying heavy loads, arranging materials, checking measurements. He guided younger workers, taught them small lessons, and shared advice quietly, without drawing attention to himself. The visitor followed at a respectful distance, absorbing every moment. He saw not just a worker, but a human being whose integrity and courage radiated naturally as the sun began to lower. Casting long shadows over the site, the laborer finished his tasks and prepared to leave. The visitor approached him finally, this time with a slight hesitance but a clear determination. "I need to speak with you," the visitor said quietly. The laborer paused, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Yes," he replied, his tone neutral yet polite. The visitor took a deep breath. "I saw everything you did today and yesterday. Your courage, your honesty, your willingness to help others without expecting anything in return is rare. More than that, it is remarkable." The laborer looked at him, not fully understanding. "I just do what I can," he said simply. The visitor nodded. "I came here to inspect a project, to check materials and schedules, but what I found, what I witnessed, is far more important than any report or plan. I want to help you. I want to give you an opportunity, something that can change your life." The laborer stared, unsure whether he should believe the words. Offers like this were uncommon in his life, and trust was something he had learned to guard carefully. Yet there was a sincerity in the visitor's eyes that was undeniable. I don't understand," the laborer said slowly. "Why me?" "Because you have qualities that cannot be bought. You have integrity, courage, and kindness. And those qualities deserve recognition. I want to offer you an opportunity to improve your life, not just for yourself, but for those around you. You have proven that actions speak louder than words, and that is something rare in any world." The laborer felt a strange mix of disbelief, gratitude, and hope. For years he had worked tirelessly, unnoticed, unrecognized, simply doing what he knew was right. And now, someone was offering him a chance that could change everything. I don't know what to say," he admitted. "Say nothing yet," the visitor replied gently. "Just know that I am serious. I will make arrangements, and soon you will understand. But remember, this is not about your work alone. It is about who you are and how you have chosen to live your life. That is what matters most." The laborer nodded, still unsure, but a seed of hope had been planted. He returned home that evening with a mixture of fatigue and anticipation. The long walk was quiet, the streets bathed in the soft glow of sunset. He thought about his life, the struggles, the sacrifices, and the small acts of kindness that had defined him. For the visitor, the day had been a revelation. He had come expecting a routine inspection, but left with a deeper understanding of human character. He knew that he had witnessed something extraordinary, a person whose actions and integrity could inspire change in ways far beyond a construction site. As the laborer reached his home, he felt a strange sense of calm. The day had been hard, but it had brought something unexpected, an opportunity, a recognition, and perhaps the beginning of a life he had never dared to imagine. Little did he know, the offer extended by the visitor was only the start of a journey that would transform not just his own life, but the lives of those around him forever. The following days brought a sense of anticipation for the laborer. Life had remained the same in its routine. The long walks to the construction site, heavy lifting, the sweat and dust, but there was an undercurrent of hope that had not existed before. Each step felt lighter, each task slightly more meaningful, because he carried with him the possibility that his life might change. Not because of what he did, but because of who he was at the site. The black car appeared once more. The visitor stepped out, not with hesitation this time, but with a quiet confidence. He had spent the past few days preparing arrangements, considering the right way to offer an opportunity that could transform the laborer's life. He approached the laborer directly, his presence commanding but gentle. "You have proven yourself in ways that words cannot capture," he said, looking directly into the laborer's eyes. "I want to help you take a step forward. This is not a handout, and it is not charity. It is a chance to grow, to learn, and to change the life of not just yourself, but those around you." The laborer listened quietly, unsure what to say. Offers like this were foreign to him. He had spent his life doing what was right without expectation, and now someone was offering him a future he had never imagined. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "I have never been offered something like this. Why me?" "Because you have integrity, courage, and kindness," the visitor replied. "Those qualities are rare, and they deserve recognition. I saw how you acted, not for praise, not for reward, but simply because it was right. That is why I chose you." The laborer's mind raced. He thought of his family, the sacrifices, the long hours, the small joys and struggles that had filled his life. He realized that for the first time someone had noticed not just what he did, but who he was. It was a feeling both overwhelming and humbling. Over the following weeks, the laborer's life began to shift. He was offered educational opportunities to improve his skills, training that would allow him to advance in the field, guidance that connected him with mentors he had never imagined meeting. The visitor ensured that these opportunities were genuine, practical, and empowering. They were not gifts given lightly. They were doors open to a future the laborer had never dared to dream of. At the construction site, the laborer's demeanor changed subtly. He continued to work hard, lifting heavy loads, arranging materials, and guiding younger workers. But there was a new energy in him, a quiet confidence that came from knowing that someone recognized his worth. The workers noticed it too. Some whispered, others smiled, but all could see the change. It was not arrogance or pride, it was the calm assurance of a man who had been seen and valued. The visitor continued to watch, impressed not by his progress and work alone, but by his humility. Despite the new opportunities, the laborer remained grounded. He helped others without expecting anything in return, guided those less experienced, and ensured safety and fairness across the site. He had learned that true strength came not from recognition or rewards, but from the consistent practice of doing what is right. One afternoon, a minor accident occurred. A scaffold wobbled dangerously, threatening to fall. Workers shouted in panic. Without hesitation, the laborer ran forward, steadied the structure, and guided everyone to safety. It was the same courage and quick thinking that had impressed the visitor weeks ago. Yet this time, the laborer acted with a calm confidence, knowing his own abilities and trusting his instincts. After the incident, the visitor approached him once more. "I wanted you to see that courage is not a one-time act. It is a habit, a choice, a way of living. You have it in abundance, and it is what sets you apart." The laborer nodded silently, understanding the truth in the words. It was not about recognition, but about the consistency of character. It was about living a life where small acts of kindness and courage formed the foundation of everything. Days turned into weeks, and the laborer's life began to change in more practical ways. He was promoted to a supervisory position, allowing him to guide teams, manage projects, and ensure safety and quality. He received training in management, planning, and leadership. Each step was deliberate, each opportunity earned through his proven character and hard work. The visitor ensured that the changes were sustainable, that the laborer had not just a chance, but the tools and support to succeed. Despite the changes, the laborer remained humble. He continued to live simply, helped those around him, and remained deeply connected to his family and community. He understood that life had given him a gift, and he wanted to share it, not hoard it. He invested in the welfare of workers, ensuring safety standards were improved, helping those who were struggling, and mentoring young people who reminded him of his own early struggles. The visitor watched this transformation quietly. He had expected change in the laborer's circumstances, but he was deeply moved by the change in the environment around him. Where there had been only exhaustion, frustration, and monotony, there was now energy, hope, and a sense of purpose. The laborer's integrity and kindness had created a ripple effect, influencing not just his own life, but the lives of everyone connected to him. One evening, as the sun set over the site, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the laborer reflected on the journey he had undergone. From a life of routine, struggle, and anonymity, he had stepped into a world of opportunity, guided by the simple principle that kindness and integrity matter. He thought of the visitor, whose quiet observation and recognition had changed everything. It was a reminder that one act of kindness, one moment of courage, can indeed set a chain of events in motion that transforms lives. The visitor approached him one last time before leaving the site. "You have taken what was given and multiplied it through your actions. Your life is changing, but more importantly, you are changing the lives of those around you. Remember, this is only the beginning. The world will notice people like you, but it is the everyday choices that define a lifetime." The laborer nodded, understanding more than words could express. He knew that his journey was far from over, but he also understood that the foundation had been laid. He had been seen, valued, and given a chance, and he would honor it through his continued work. Courage, and kindness. As the laborer walked home that evening, the streets were quiet, bathed in the fading light of the day. He thought of the struggles, the moments of doubt, and the small acts of kindness that had brought him here. He felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the opportunities given, but for the chance to live a life guided by principles that mattered. The world had shifted slightly for him, and in turn, he was ready to make a difference in ways he had never imagined. In the end, it was clear that one simple act of kindness at a construction site had changed everything. It had created connections, inspired trust, and opened doors. But most importantly, it had revealed the power of character, courage, and integrity. The laborer's life would never be the same, and the ripple effects of that one act would continue, touching lives far beyond what he or anyone else could see. It was a story of hope, of human goodness, and of the profound impact that simple, selfless actions can have on the world around us. Months passed since the laborer's life began to change. The construction site had transformed under his guidance and the opportunities offered by the visitor. Where there had once been chaos, dust, and exhaustion, there was now organization, safety, and a sense of purpose. Workers moved with confidence, encouraged by the laborer's guidance and example. His leadership was not just about authority. It was about care, understanding, and fairness. Every morning he arrived early, as he always had, walking the familiar streets that led him to the site. But now, his steps carried a different sense of responsibility, pride, and hope. The black car, once a symbol of curiosity, now represented the opportunities that had opened to him. The doors he had walked through because someone had seen his character and kindness. Yet, despite all the changes, he remained grounded, living simply, and treating everyone with respect. The visitor returned frequently, not to inspect buildings or reports, but to observe the growth that had been set in motion. He noticed how the laborer inspired others, how small acts of guidance, encouragement, and patience rippled through the site, creating a more positive and productive environment. It was clear that the laborer had not only embraced the opportunities offered to him, but had also amplified their impact, helping others rise alongside him. One afternoon, a young worker approached the laborer hesitantly. He had been struggling with a particular task, unsure of how to proceed. The laborer stopped what he was doing and knelt beside him, guiding him through each step patiently. The young worker's eyes brightened with understanding, and a quiet gratitude filled the space between them. The laborer did not seek acknowledgement. He simply wanted to help others succeed, just as he had been given a chance to succeed himself. The visitor watched from a distance, smiling quietly. He saw the laborer's influence not as a result of authority, but of genuine care. He understood that true leadership and respect were earned through empathy, kindness, and consistent action. The laborer had become more than a worker or a supervisor. He had become a symbol of what integrity and humility could achieve. As the sun climbed higher, the site hummed with activity. The laborer moved from team to team, offering guidance, encouragement, and sometimes just a quiet presence that reassured others. He had learned that leadership was not only about directing work, but also about nurturing confidence and trust. Each worker felt seen, valued, and supported, creating a sense of unity that had been absent before. During lunch, the laborer sat with a small group of workers, sharing simple meals and light conversation. He listened to their stories, their struggles, and their dreams. His presence was calm and encouraging, and it reminded them that someone cared, not just about the work being done, but about them as individuals. The atmosphere was one of camaraderie and respect, a stark contrast to the earlier days of tension and exhaustion. Later that afternoon, an unexpected challenge arose. A critical piece of machinery malfunctioned, threatening to delay the entire project. Workers grew anxious, unsure how to proceed. The laborer remained calm, quickly assessing the situation and organizing a solution. He delegated tasks efficiently, ensured safety protocols were followed, and stayed actively involved until the problem was resolved. His leadership turned potential chaos into a coordinated effort, minimizing disruption and stress. The visitor, observing the laborer's handling of the situation, was reminded of the initial reason he had taken notice. It had not been the physical labor, the lifting of bricks, or the management of tasks that impressed him initially. It had been the laborer's character, his instinct to act rightly, his courage, and his humility. And now, months later, he saw that same character shining even brighter, amplified by experience and opportunity as evening approached. The laborer completed the day's work and prepared to leave. Workers gathered to express their appreciation not just for his guidance, but for the fairness, respect, and encouragement he had consistently shown. The laborer accepted their thanks quietly, smiling, but never allowing it to change his humble demeanor. He knew that recognition was fleeting. The impact of genuine care and guidance was lasting. Walking home, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From long, tiring days with little notice or reward, to a life where his integrity and kindness had opened doors, the path had been remarkable. Yet he remained the same person at heart, someone who valued hard work, honesty, and compassion above all else. He understood that opportunities and changes were meaningful only when used to uplift others. At home, his family greeted him warmly. He shared stories of the day, of small victories and moments of learning. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that his growth was not just personal, but also impacting those around him positively. Life had changed in tangible ways: better living conditions, opportunities for education and skill development, and a safer, more supportive work environment. But the deeper transformation was in the lives touched by his presence and actions. Over time, the laborer continued to embrace new opportunities. He enrolled in courses to expand his knowledge, connected with mentors who guided him in leadership and planning, and began to explore ways to contribute to his community. Each step he took was deliberate, not out of ambition for wealth or status, but to create positive change and help others follow a similar path. The visitor observed quietly, satisfied with the results. He had seen the laborer transform opportunities into lasting impact. He understood that one act of kindness at a construction site had not only changed the life of the laborer, but it also initiated a ripple effect that touched everyone around him. The laborer's journey was a living example of how integrity, Humility and compassion could transform not just individual lives, but entire communities. One day, the laborer stood at the edge of the site, looking at the progress made. He saw workers moving confidently, teams collaborating effectively, and a sense of purpose filling the air. He remembered the early days, the dust, the heat, the long hours, and the small, quiet act of offering water and shade to a visitor. That moment had set in motion a chain of events that had transformed his life and the lives of countless others. He realized that the true power of kindness and integrity lay not in grand gestures, but in small, consistent actions. Each decision to act rightly, each moment of courage or compassion, compounded over time to create opportunities and positive change. He understood that while life would always have challenges, his choices, grounded in character and care for others, could shape the future in ways he had never imagined. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the site, the laborer felt a quiet sense of peace. The journey had been long and demanding, but it had led to growth, fulfillment, an impact far beyond what he could have foreseen. The visitor's initial recognition had sparked change, but it was the laborer's own consistent integrity, humility, and kindness that had sustained and amplified it. The story of one simple act of kindness at a construction site had reached its latest chapter, showing that true character, when combined with opportunity and courage, could transform lives, inspire others, and leave a lasting impact. The laborer had grown not only in position or circumstance, but in understanding, empathy, and influence, proving that even small, quiet actions can lead to extraordinary outcomes. And as he walked home that evening, he knew that the journey would continue. Guided by the principles that had always defined him, integrity, kindness, and the willingness to act rightly. No matter the circumstances,